Arts Inside Out started 9 years ago when I realized that as a person who's been living with AIDS for, at that time, around 20 years, I always had a very strong feeling of connection to people I met who also were HIV positive or had AIDS, and I wanted to travel to another part of the world and work with people whose backgrounds were completely different than mine, but whose health challenges were very similar. And I thought of sub-Saharan Africa and soon zeroed in on South Africa. Initially, I really wanted to work with kids exclusively. I had a very good friend in New York who's the head of an organization named Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, who knew of Nkosi's Haven and knew Gail Johnson, and he thought Gail and I would be a really strong partnership because we're both quirky people and we do things our own way. And he introduced us by Skype, and we fell in love immediately, and I started working with the kids in 2011, and we added the moms to the program in 2014. Interestingly, I think working with the mothers and kids at Nkosi's Haven, the impact on those two groups is in some ways the mirror reflection of each other, in that I think working with the moms at Nkosi's Haven who span a huge number of years, because there are grandmoms, there are moms, there are women who became mothers at a very young age, women who became mothers at an older age. There are also mothers from many different parts of Africa. And I think that our working with the moms has really brought them together and made them feel unified and sort of made tensions that might have existed culturally or in terms of different nationalities go away, because they're really learning each other's stories. Working with the kids, who are very much unified, very much a community at Nkosi's Haven, I think we've really empowered them to individuate and to really begin to explore what makes them unique, special, different from every other child in Nkosi's Haven and every other child everywhere. I mean, I think in the work we do, we're not just working with people who are HIV positive or who have AIDS, because many of the people who reside at the Haven are not HIV positive. In many cases, they're children who weren't infected at the time of birth, or children whose parents seroconverted after they were born, or in some cases they're grandmothers who are taking care of a grandchild because the mother has died and the grandmother steps in to care for the child. So we're working both with a large portion of our kids and moms, I think about 40%, are HIV positive, and they're grappling with issues of stigma and fear of mortality, I suppose, and for the teenagers who are HIV positive, figuring out how to be compliant to a pretty strict medical protocol when the whole mission of teenage years is to rebel. And then there are the other kids at Nkosi's Haven who are really growing up in the negative space of the AIDS epidemic. They themselves don't have HIV. Perhaps their parents do, perhaps a sibling does, perhaps they've lost parents or family members because of it. So AIDS has had a huge impact on their lives, but they're not grappling with it in the exact same way. And we tried to design the curriculum so that it can work for both.
And how is it going so far?
It's going very well. Today is show day, so it's madness. We have a cast of 130 people. Our youngest cast member is 2. I don't know how old our oldest cast member is, but probably somewhere around 60. So this is the first day where they're all together on stage at the same time, and it's insanity from an operational standpoint. I'd say it's gone better this year than ever before, because every year we learn more and more how to do it, and we also continue to deepen and formalize our partnership with the Market Theatre Lab. So this year they provided us with 10 of their acting students who have been helping us enormously. That's 20 extra pairs of hands, and I don't know how we do it without them. We're already a team of 18, so it's taking 28 people to keep this manageable, but we are keeping it manageable. And in return, we provide a bursary for a second-year Market Theatre Lab acting student who can't afford the tuition.
remember one day when I was going to the river to fetch water. When I coming back, they started.
I would love to expand Arts Inside Out to other communities. I'd love to limit it, I suppose, to communities heavily impacted by HIV/AIDS, because I've been so personally affected by HIV/AIDS, and that personal connection, I think, really energizes and adds urgency and perhaps empathy to the work I do. The trick is that I have another career, which is really my main career, and that is that I'm a writer and director of theater in New York, and it's just hard to carve out another huge chunk of time to go away to some place and do this work, because of course, in addition to the 3 weeks we spent here on the ground, there's a lot of time we spend planning and organizing and fundraising and building a team, etc. So I'd love to expand it, but I'd have to figure out exactly how to do that. I think probably the biggest surprise of doing this kind of work is how important the synergy between my organization and a partnering organization is. If those two organizations, the outreach organization, the organization it's coming into to do that outreach work, are not aligned, it just can't go well. And I've been so moved and touched by and thrilled by how synergistic Gail Johnson and I are, and how willing Gail is to let me put 130 of her moms and kids, many of whom need meds during the day, on buses, bring them down to the central business district of Johannesburg, and trust that we're going to come back with the same number of kids we left with, and that we will keep them safe. At the same time, kick their butts a little bit, because she wants that. She wants the kids to be challenged, and she wants them to be, for us to have expectations, and for the kids to know it when they're not meeting those expectations, and for the kids to be really applauded when they do. And it's just so thrilling to be working with someone like Gail, who is extraordinarily empathetic, unbelievably wise, and very worldly. She really understands people, and she understands real life problems, and yet she's also a dreamer. And that combination is pretty rare and pretty thrilling.